Hey there, I'm Christopher McClure, and welcome to Meditation Happy Hour, where I share meditations, practices, processes, perspectives, traditional and modern. Today, I'm going to share a meditation practice that is a combination of both traditional and modern. So, there is a Tibetan Buddhist Tibetan Buddhist meditation called Shamatha Vipassana, and I've been practicing this technique um, since the '80s, the early '80s, and it's basically an out-breath meditation. Now, there are a few things in our culture, in our world culture, that are I can cite as what I would call brilliant developments. Um, One of them was the way that the modern guitar tuning, the way that the modern guitar is tuned, the way that came about. um, Before, I believe this happened I'm thinking like the 1500s, it might have been the 1600s, but before that, guitars, yeah, I'm actually not sure about the time because it might have been the 1700s too. But before this change happened, the way guitars were tuned is the same way a lute is tuned, which is in fourths. And it's the same way that modern basses, string basses, are tuned, and violins. But back in whenever that time was, I'm thinking it's the 1500s. In I believe it first happened in Italy, and then a lot of the guitar development happened in Spain. But the in Italy, what was called the Italian guitar, it was a five-string guitar, and but there's somebody figured out that if in that you so in a standard guitar tuning you have an E on the bottom, and you have an A, and then a D, and then a G. These are all fourths. And then the next one would be in the fourth. If it was a fourth, it would be a C. But instead, they tuned it down to a B, so that the distance between the G, the third and the second string, was a third rather than a fourth, a major third. And then from the B to the E, the high E, that was back to a fourth. And and it didn't have the low E, so it was just an A, D, G, B, and E. And what that did, because you had that major third there instead of the fourth, it made it easier to play chords on guitar. And because it was easier to play chords on guitar, guitar became more orchestral. It became an orchestral instrument, like a piano, where you have one instrument that can actually play like a whole complete. You can have chords and melody happening at the same with bass happening at the same time. Um, and then somebody added the low E string, and then that became the six string guitar that we know today. So that slight tuning there, right, was a brilliant thing. Well, now taking this information over to the world of meditation, um, if you look at most meditation techniques that are available to the world, in the world, they involve breath. And if you look at those breath meditations, almost all of them are the complete cycle of breath, the in-breath, the out-breath, and they may do things like counting the breath, or you know, or extending the space at the end of the breath, and making it all like block breathing, making each part of the breath equal. Um, but what the Tibetans did, and not sure who did this, but they decided just to focus on the out breath. Now, there's something pretty extraordinary that happens when you just focus on the out breath. There's a number of things, but one of the things that happens is that it that space that's at the end of the out breath and before the next out breath occurs, that space becomes a field of awareness, and whatever's happening in the experience of the meditator is allowed to exist. So this experience of breathing and just focusing on the in and the out breath, which can be kind of a more subjective experience, now it becomes more porous and just kind of open to the whole universe, including the whole universe inside oneself. Um, so that kind of sets the stage for how I've adapted this out breath meditation into a what I would consider a more modern approach, or an approach that incorporates what I call the three body cycles. So the three body cycles, so if you sit down and you just kind of pay attention to what's happening in your body, the first thing that's going to come up is the breathing, because it's just the most obvious, and it's also the one that we can control. If you compare it to uh, the next cycle, sensation, right? It's hard, you can't sensation is something that you can't really control. It just happens in your body. And then there is a subset of sensation, which is pulsation. It's a certain kind of sensation. Now, these three body cycles, they can each one in themselves can be a meditation object, and you can meditate anywhere. You can find that meditation object anywhere in the body. You can find your breathing anywhere in the body. You can find sensation anywhere in the body. You can find pulsation anywhere in the body. So what I found with, in terms of, so I feel like there's like a triplicity here, and there's a completeness. But what I found is that when that the breath tends to dominate whenever you're trying to bring these three together, and you're focusing on both the in breath and the out breath. The breath tends to dominate, because, like I said, it's a voluntary thing. You can actually control it, and your attention tends to go to that, and the others kind of get pushed to the side. So, but what I realized recently is that if I limited myself to just the out breath, and I actually synced the out breath to the pulse. In other words, I let the pulse lead. Every time felt a pulse, let an out breath occur. I found that the out breath would follow the pulse, and sensation would naturally be in the mix. So it was actually a way of creating uh, a field where all three of these body cycles can exist. So I want to try that right now with you. I'm going to put this timer on for 3 minutes and 33 seconds, and we're going to feel the pulse, let it lead, experience an out breath, and then the sensation, and just kind of get a mixture of all that. Here we go. Okay, we're back. So yeah, in this meditation, the pulse is leading, the out breath is following, and the sensation just exists. And there's I believe there's a symbolism, this as a triplicity, there's a symbolism. Um, I'm not I think there's a couple of variations, so uh, I'm not sort of pinning it down. I'm going to kind of leave it up to you, the the viewer and listener to decide for yourself. But I'm pretty sure that pulse is the the feminine or the passive part of this equation. If you use the triplicity of active, passive, and connective, it's the passive. So then, you can make the argument that breath is the active, and that sensation is the connective. Um, but it seems like the pulse and the sensation are kind of like sort of a polarity, that pulse is passive and sensation is active, and then respiration is the connective kind of element between them. So, yeah, those are some ideas. In any case, the pulse is emotional, and the sensation is sensory, obviously, and um, kind of in the touch category. And then the out breath is more about awareness, so more about the kind of the mental, in the mental realm. So anyway, this is Christopher McClure from Wholeness Geeks, and if you want to, if you have any questions, you want to make any suggestions, even if you want to share your own meditations or processes or practices or perspectives, you can do that by joining Wholeness Geeks, uh, Wholeness Geeks Facebook group. That's Wholeness Geeks Facebook group. So, um, once again, I'm Christopher McClure, and this has been Meditation Happy Hour, talking to you about what I would consider, what I'm calling the three body cycle meditation, and how that's an adaptation of the Shamatha Vipassana. Thanks for listening and watching.